their good information they've got for you. So our first presentation is on economic comparison of tillage practices under pivot irrigation. Are you guys hearing me okay? Okay. This is with Jessica Johnson and Gene Kizzire. Jessica is new to the Panhandle. She joined the Panhandle Research and Development Center in 2012. She's a native of Colorado. She received her Bachelor of Science from Colorado State University and her Master's from Kansas State University. Her current extension focus is on improving economic viability through increased awareness of innovative risk management practices. And then Gene Kizzire, am I pronouncing that correctly? Kizzire. Okay, I'm sorry, Kizzire. Gene Kizzire joined the Panhandle Research Extension Center in 1997, where he worked with John Smith on sugar beet varieties. He has been the farm manager at the Research Center since 2000, and he has been involved with research and production in corn, dry edible beans, sugar beets, and chicory. He has had extensive experience with furrow, sprinkler, and subsurface drip irrigation systems and has been involved with conventional, minimum till, zone till, and no-till practices. Gene and Jessica's topic will evaluate the performance of 2 crop rotations under no-till, strip till, and conventional till during the years of 2008 to 2012. They will discuss the trade-offs of each management practice or system, the results of the trials, and the comparison of the costs of production. So this very first presentation is going to be on the economic comparison of tillage practices under irrigation, pivot irrigation, and the second one that they'll move into is the dryland budget comparison that Jessica will give. So with warm welcome, we welcome you too. Thank you.
I'm going to get you started out here, kind of give you a little bit of a background on this tillage rotation that we're doing. Then I'll turn it over to Jessica, and she can kind of give you some of the economics of it and stuff. In 2007, we started this tillage practice. We'd been asked to do some no-till research, so we decided we would do some no-till and compare it to zone till and then the conventional plowing that we used to do. So we started this project in 2007. We've been collecting data from 2008 to 2012. One of the questions that was asked, can we grow sugar beets in no-till? And so we set up a 4-year rotation with corn, sugar beets, corn, and dry edible beans. And then we set up another rotation with corn, and then dry edible beans. We did this with Dean Yonce, our irrigation specialist, which is no longer with us. He passed away from cancer. John Smith was our machinery systems engineer. He has since retired. And Dave Reichert was Dean's technician, and then myself as farm manager. So Dave and I just were carrying this on. We figured that it's valuable information to collect. We're starting to implement a few other things with Jeff Bradshaw, our entomologist. He's doing some research with bugs on the sugar beets and how that affects the effects that it's having with different rotations with the bugs and stuff. So we're trying to implement some other things into this research now. Go ahead. As you can see, we put this underneath the lateral move system. The rows run parallel with the direction that the sprinkler runs. We set this up on the east side of this, spans 1, 2, and 3. That's our 3-year rotation with the corn, dry edible beans. In the west side of the sprinkler system, spans 4, 5, 6, and 7, is our sugar beets, corn, dry edible bean, corn rotation. We've been, as far as fertilizer, we go in and soil sample 3 of the no-till plots. Like span 5 there, we call that one filled. That span is one filled, 2.5 acres, big fields that we work with at the university. But that span 5 will go in, and 3 of those will be a no-till corn plot. We soil sample 3 of those down to 4 feet of 0 to 8, 8 to 24, 24 to 48, and then we soil sample the zone till plots and then the no-till plots. So far, the soil samples have been fairly much the same. We're starting to see some differences in residual nitrate, so we're probably going to have to start fertilizing the no-till separate from the plow and separate from the zone till also. But we are keeping records of residual nitrate and just how much fertilizer we're using on the different tillage treatments. Dave Reichert puts soil probes in. He's monitoring water usage. According to, we haven't irrigated according to his soil probes, but he's keeping track of that data, just seeing how much water is stored in the soil and stuff then. The corn stalks, we do graze those in the fall. So we do remove some of the residue just from what the cattle remove. As far as on the plowed ones, we double disc that before we plow. The zone till plots, we do not disc it, we just shred the stalks, and then we do the zone tillage and plant, trying to leave more residue on the surface. And then the no-till, we just shred the stalks. We do fertilize all of it, and then the fertilizer is incorporated in with the sprinkler. Are there any questions on kind of the tillage, the way this is set up? If not, I'll turn this over to Jessica, and she can kind of go over the numbers and stuff then.
Gene, could you expand on your residual nitrate, what you're starting to see difference there?
I don't have those numbers. I've been keeping track of that. You know, usually in the past, there's maybe been about 20 pounds of residual, and I don't remember which one's which, but there's been a little bit of difference, but we're starting to see that spread out further now. It seems like there's maybe a little bit more residual nitrate in the no-till, to where we can maybe apply a little less fertilizer in the no-till treatments. And as far as we've been doing this for the 6 years now, as far as organic matter, we really haven't seen an increase in organic matter. I don't know if in 6 years you can see an increase in organic matter yet, but we haven't seen that just yet. But
Why do you shred the corn stalks?
well, we try to size the residue just so it. This is planted in 22-inch rows, so we need to size the residue so it can flow through the planter better, so we don't have plug-ups with the planter and stuff in. Yes?
You're measuring soil moisture, not using that for scheduling. Is the scheduling then based upon the bare soil, the plow treatment? Is it based on the no-till or strip till, or how's the irrigated scheduling?
Well, it usually gets irrigated twice a week, and I put on 3/4 of an inch of water. So it's not with the temperatures that we have in the summertime. You know, we have put out soil probes and monitored water moisture and tried to irrigate according, make sure we're not over irrigating. And as of right now, we're not over irrigating. So we haven't been using that information yet to manage water applied then. Okay, I'll turn it over to Jessica then.
Okay, I'm going to stay down here on the ground, so please forgive me if I look at the screen a little bit too much today. So what we really wanted to know, at least from my perspective as an extension economist and as an educator, was, do tillage practices have a statistically significant impact on yield? And so as you look at the screen, in the 4-year rotation, we see some obvious differences in the sugar beets. And for the statistics, we separated out what the corn was following so that we could say that the tillage was separate from the crop that was was before the corn. So you'll notice a little bit of difference there in the 4-year rotation, and the beans, again, some difference. I think what's really interesting is if we look down at those corn numbers, we do see a lot of difference between whether corn was following beans or corn was following corn. Just an interesting result, and I'm sure if you have questions about that, Gene would be happy to answer them. So then what we did was we did what's called a Tukey test, is where we take those means and we compare them to one another, and we want to know whether the value that we got was absolutely random or could be attributed to that tillage practice. So you'll notice on the plow versus zone till that there was no statistically significant difference between the plow and the zone tillage. On the plow versus no-till, we see no difference in either of the beans in either rotation, but we do see a difference in corn following corn. As we move over to the no-till versus zone tillage, we see that we do see a difference in everything but the corn in the 3-year rotation. So overall, what that tells us is that there's no statistical yield difference between plow and zone tillage. The statistical significant decrease in yield between plow and no-till for all commodities except beans and 3-year corn following beans. And there's a statistically significant decrease in yield between zone till and no-till for all commodities except for both of the corn categories in the 3-year rotation. So we do know that there is some difference, or there's an impact on yield based on the tillage that you use, especially when you're moving from a plow to a no-till or a zone till to a no-till. So now that we know that there is a difference in that yield, what we have to come up with is there an economic difference? So what is the break-even price for each tillage practice? And I want to preface this by saying when I calculate break-even prices, I'm basing it off what the gentlemen do out in the field. So we noted that there was no difference in the water level that was applied to the commodities. That was not differentiated among the tillage practices, so in the budgets it's the same. So basically what we're saying is based on the yield that we provide, what will our cost be? So most of you all know that break-even is our total cost divided by our estimated yield. And I think what's really important is that I'm including land, depreciation, interest, taxes, and overhead. This isn't necessarily the money that's coming out of your pocket. This is the total, what I would call economic value break-even price. They're developed from the 2013 crop budgets that are put together every year by Robert Klein and Roger Wilson. I'm going to talk a little bit more extensively about some of the changes I made in these budgets for this particular study, but I won't bore you with that twice since I get a whole 2 hours with you. So I'm sorry it's small. Okay, I'm not going to show you this the whole time, but I just wanted to show you what the budgets actually look like. So this is what our budget's set up like. We have field operations in the top section, materials and services in the next section, and then we go into some of those things that I talked about in terms of interest, overhead, real estate opportunity, taxes, etc. So again, that's just highlighting some of the items. We do include depreciation, again, that overhead stuff, and then our break-even prices are at the bottom of the page. If you would like to see the calculations in this format, I would be happy to email them to you. I did not bring them with me, and I'm not going to show you another slide like that for this particular presentation. So what we did was we sat down with each of the specialists who knows what's happening out at the field, and that was Gary Herger, who's our nutrient management and soil quality specialist, Bob Wilson, who's our weed specialist, Gene helped us out, and then Jim Shield, who does a lot with the dry edible beans. And so I sat down with him and said, okay, here's the study, here's the budget, is it right? So this is not from an economist's perspective. I've had lots of other people look over these budgets so that we ensure that they're as realistic as possible. They will never be perfect, they're only an estimation, but they're as realistic as we can get them for the situation that we have. So we'll start out with corn, and I was laughing with Gene about this earlier. You build the budget and you plug in the yield and you adjust your, let's say your fertilizer based on that yield, and somehow on God's green earth they came out break even, almost dead even. And I can tell you I could do this 100 times and never have it happen again. So they're about a penny difference on the break even for each of the tillage practices, and you could say to yourself, well, I can save a penny anywhere. So I just think it's a really good testament that even though for corn at least, what this is telling us is even though you have a decrease in yield, economically you're pretty much equal. Now, your farm operation and your land might be different, and that's okay, but you have to go through this exercise on your own so that you know, if I were to move between these practices, what will my economics look like? Even if I'm anticipating a decrease in yield, can I still get the same value from that product? Dry beans comes out a little bit different. We see that no-till actually is our lowest break-even price, and we move up from there. And I think what's interesting is if you take that $1.82 and you multiply it by the number of hundredweight that you can get off your operation, we're talking about a significant amount of money. Now, again, this is an estimation. It might not reflect your farm or your property, but it does show that in dry beans, it could be economically advantageous to switch to a reduced till or a no-till system. So we move into sugar beets. This is where it gets fun. We realize that our no-till system actually costs us more than our plowed system, and that that $4 per ton is kind of a difference, the opposite thought of the beans. You might be better off going off economically in a plow situation, but you have to balance agronomics and economics in your farming operation. Is it worth that additional basically $5 to not have the residue, to not have those sorts of things? That's a decision that you all have to make. So based on the Panhandle Research and Extension Center tillage study results, there is a difference in yield between no-till and other tillage practices. Despite the yield differences in no-till corn and dry beans, no-till corn and dry beans have a lower break-even price. No-till sugar beets cost $4.90 per ton more to produce than plow tillage. So I know that was really short, but I guess this is our opportunity with you to have a discussion. If there's any questions we can answer, this is, we're working on small plots. The yields might be a tick bit higher because of that. We were working with some different factors, but we really want the opportunity to talk to you about this tillage study. So at this time, we'll take any questions on the tillage study.
Well, initially it sounds like it doesn't matter whether you do no-till or conventional or plow or whatever, but you also, when you bring in the organic matter increase and things like that, and like you were saying, that's the differences between the long term, but it's kind of like the golden goose. You kill it or you get the better profit today instead of tomorrow. But I guess that's what it's pointing out.
And again, it comes back to you and what your decisions are. I mean, as an economist, I make the monetary decision. As an agronomist, they make the agronomic decision. And you all come somewhere in the middle. And so you'll see us sometimes maybe conflict in what we're saying, but you're the one who has to balance those decisions. What is your long-term goal for your operation? Is it a financial goal? Is it a viability goal? Is it a sustainability goal? And are those the same things or not? So you all have to come up with that choice.
If I understood you right, irrigation was applied the same to everything. That's also another one of those things where the power to irrigate and the water itself.
Right. So in those budget comparisons, there's no difference in the irrigation costs. I'm pretty sure we calculated those off of 13 inches. So for the corn, and I don't remember what the others were. So we're applying that irrigation at the same rate. So we're charging you the same rate across the board for that irrigation, even though there's a lot of literature that says that no-till takes less water. Because we didn't have the variables set completely and weren't adjusting that irrigation within the study itself. From my perspective, it's not okay just to say, well, we know it's down lower, so we'll just come up with an arbitrary number. If we're going to add those in, we need to know exactly what that field is using and how. And also, I would say we also need to look at it at a larger plot system than what we currently have to see some real differences in water use.
When you say plow, what equipment are you talking about?
It's a moldboard plow.
And on the no-till plots, how long were they no-till before?
They were not no-till prior to that. That's why we didn't collect data on 2007 year. But so we just started collecting the data. So basically, we just had 1 year worth of no-till before we started collecting the data in 2000.
It normally takes 3 years or so of no-till before you because you're changing the soil biology. So that's where you can see a different result.
Right.
The question was, how long had the land been no-tilled prior to the start of the study? And the answer was that it had not been. That's why we did not collect data on 2007. The comment back to that was that normally it takes 3 years for the biology of that soil to change, and that's when we'll see the changes moving forward.
How do you account for temperature differences in the crops? Did everybody hear the question?
Repeat it for the sake of recording.
Okay. Oh, okay. The question was, how do we compensate for temperatures in the soil? We don't monitor any temperatures in the soil.
From year to year?
In this trial, we do not know.
All we can do as far as statistically for the significance, to my knowledge, is count that as a part of the year variable. So where that we can't account for everything that happens within a single year from one to the next, but we can say that 2009 had something different than 2010, but we didn't run the statistics in that manner. We just looked at the means at this point. But if we were to publish this information, that could be a consideration.
How many times have you replicated the study?
The question was, how many times do we replicate the study? There's 5 reps in each plot then. Or was the question over here?
What are you attributing the yield drag on the no-till component? In other words, when you walk those fields, was it shortage of ears per acre? Was it kernel size, kernel count? And you start talking 20 bushels an acre, there's something really missing out there, and I'm just wondering whether the stands were also standardized, in terms of that, or was it just we planned it and here's the numbers?
Do I have to repeat the whole question, Paul? The question was, I'll probably forget most of this. Basically, how do we contribute the yield drag in the corn to the no-till? Am I correct?
What was actually visually obvious? Why was the yield so far off?
Okay. Just from a visual, we hand harvest these plots, and we take individual yields off of each plot. But just a visual, I would probably say that probably the most dramatic thing that you see is in the springtime with the residue on the surface. It seems like that soil. Now we're not taking temperatures, but I've noticed this in some of the other fields where we are doing some no-till, that it seems like that no-till corn's a little bit slower coming up. Sometimes it might take it a couple days longer to come up out of the ground, and I'm assuming that's contributed to just the cooler soil temperatures then.
Does that make an argument then not to be mowing those stalks down and putting that blanket on the no-till component with your stalk shredder?
Well, after we graze these, the stalks are kind of matted down. We're just kind of trying to chop some of them down that are, still standing then. So I don't think that would make a lot of difference, because the cattle tromped on the stalks and stuff. So for the most part, things are fairly flat then. We're just trying to knock everything down so it's uniform across everything then. He asked if I run row cleaners. When I do plant into the cornstalk residue, I just set those down so it's moving the residue off the soil. I'm not digging into the soil and moving soil. The question was, with the slower emergence of the corn, are we seeing any differences later in the season, a month or two down the road? Usually, we've got a self-propelled sprayer, and when you drive past them fields, you can definitely pick out the no-till plots. The corn seems to be a little bit shorter, 1, 2, 3 months down the road. Then it tends to maybe tassel a day or two later also. She asked if there's the same fertilizer program. As of right now, everything's getting fertilized the same. We kind of, there might be 10 or 20 pounds of nitrogen applied difference. I kind of just do an average and then just apply an average amount on that particular field then.
Was there very much difference in your final population?
I think they've been taking population counts. I haven't seen that data.
Gene, I was just wondering, with our lower water allocations that we're going to see in the future, have you considered adding another high revenue crop like winter wheat, and then really tracking the water use, just so you can see how much less water you can start using over time,
The question was, with our limitation of water and allocations, have we considered introducing a wheat crop, another residue crop, to help with
just kind of lower that soil moisture evaporation.
Yeah, to lower the ET.
Obviously beets are in a lot of residue, so you're kind of losing that component. So maybe adding another higher residue crop, especially like winter wheat. So over the long term of the rotation, you can lessen your water use and see how much less water you can get by with it.
Yeah, we haven't done that. I don't know, for as small as that area is, we don't have the space to add something like that. I know a few years ago when we were doing some direct harvest research with John Smith, we planted dry beans into wheat stubble. I know that's not the normal probably rotation, but we planted beans into wheat. We had cover and then no cover. And when I monitored the water moisture and the usage there, the bare soil, the top foot, I lost that moisture relatively quick. And then where I had the cover, it wasn't until the very end of the season that we started losing. The numbers started to go down in the cover crop areas. So I know there's a definite advantage there as far as water moisture goes.
Gene, are you considering how long is this going to go on, this project?
The question was, how long is this project going to go on? The project was funded for 4 years. We don't have funding for it right now, so that's kind of why we're starting to implement in some of Jeff Bradshaw's work and some stuff Bob Harvison's doing. We'd like to keep it going as long as we could, because I think it's very, very valuable information. So if anybody wants to help fund that, we'll just keep her going.
Yeah, the longer that it would be a no-till, we'll probably see some differences in an early no-till with all of that residue, and everybody's getting the same amount of nitrogen, as probably some types and
Right.
stuff up there as well.
And this, I guess, I don't know, we've got guidance systems on the tractor, so when we go in and plant this now, we're planting, the corn row gets planted right back on top of the same corn row that it was last year then too.
So you ever have problems with the root balls when you're planting on top of the row like that?
The question was, do we have any problems with the root balls? What we've done with our planter, originally we did have, with our planter, we put a bracket on it and extended our coulters out in front, further of the row unit. And when that would wipe them off of the soil, they wouldn't tend to wrap and plug up quite as bad then. So, and that's another reason I just kind of set them so they're just tickling. So a lot of them root balls are staying intact now. But we've got a no-till coulter out front that cuts through that residue, so seeds aren't getting planted on top of the ground and stuff then. Any other questions? We had a lot of time.
On your clean field ground, when you're getting that ready for planting, how far ahead of planting are you doing that?
The question was on the plow treatments, how far ahead of planting are we doing that? A lot of it varies from year to year. Kind of depends if we get rain or we don't have any rain. But generally, we try to do that at least a couple weeks ahead of planting, and then we come in and we'll roll a harrow it twice before we plant then. Well, I'll see no more questions. I'll turn it over to Jessica then. The question was, when do we do the strip till treatment? We do that in the spring, about a week to 2 weeks ahead of planting then. Thank you.
Well, I'm